All right, everyone. So we've been watching our eco cups. We've been collecting data, and we've officially measured the growth of our eco cups for over 8 total days. Short period of time, but the plants grow fast. So what we want to do is think about how are we going to try to make sense of what happened, and that's in the form of our report. So we're going to come up with a report, and we're going to answer important ideas about the data we had so that we can decide if our independent variable and our experiment overall helps us better understand what's going on in our environment and our city. So, goal 1 for this project is to use evidence to support or reject a hypothesis or argument. So, the perfect thing to do, one of the main goals is, can you reject your hypothesis or can you support it? Either one of those is perfect. Supporting or rejecting. It's not about making sure your hypothesis was correct. That doesn't matter at all. Really what matters is, what does the data say? Did it go against what you expected in your hypothesis or your argument? Or did it support it and, reinforce what you already thought? Goal 2 is use data to argue if independent variable threatens our environment. So based on our results, did you notice that your independent variable was harmful or reduced the growth of the plant? If so, you need to use that information, your results and your data, to show, look, this is bad for our environment. Goal number 3 is that all members share duties for data collection and this report. So we'll talk about that later in class together, about how we handle sharing responsibility. Goal number 4 was to demonstrate a knowledge of experimental design. So the more you can discuss and share how you've designed your experiment, the more you can discuss maybe ways to improve it if we were to do it a next time, etc. And your ability to use concepts like independent variable, dependent, the experimental group, the control group, controlling variables. These are all about experimental design. So the more you can share about that, the better. All right, but let's get to the point. Let's look at the first task. It says, for this experiment, what was the scientific problem we were trying to identify and address? What was the scientific problem that we were trying to find more information or evidence for? So each one of these questions, we can go down below and we can find some support for it. All right, so for us to identify our scientific problem, it says review your notebook for a scientific problem. You'll find it in a question form. It was our brain primer number 11. So here's our brain primer number 11. It says go to the Ecolicious notes on page 52 and record the following, or write down the following. So this was the problem for our experiment. It was, how do humans impact our environment? So how do humans impact our environment? So the problem is, so our scientific problem equals, it's how do humans impact our environment? Question mark. And there you go. I'm going to color this a specific color. Just so it stands out. I want it to be clear. And I also want, if I was in a team, I would identify that I handled this question. This next one, you may, in your answer, say that another teammate did it. So you can share responsibilities depending on how your team chooses to do this. All right. Next question is, what was a hypothesis you produced? That hypothesis, your hypothesis number 1, let's see if we can learn more about it. All right, it says for hypothesis that you can find your first hypothesis around page 52 in your Ecolicious notes. Great. For me, I already know it came from right here. So it says, so hypothesis number 1, it says our independent variable will impact blank. So we're supposed to write our independent variable will impact. I'm just going to copy that to make my life easier. And go back up to the top. I'm going to fill the blank in, correct? Here we go. And right-click, paste. And let's make sure we can see it. And let's shrink this thing down, right? It's way too big. So let's get the font down to, and we'll go with 14. All right, so our independent variable will impact the eco cup by, and I'm just going to guess, I'm going to go the other direction than we usually do, by helping the plants grow. So my first hypothesis, I just made it up on my own. I'm sure you have a better hypothesis, but I just went with that maybe the independent variable will have a positive effect. Even though we think the independent variables or the human impacts are negative, maybe it's good. So I just came up with one. Notice it sounds confident. There's no questions here. It's just a claim. It will do this. It will help the plants grow, right? On hypothesis 2, let's see what we come up with, but I'm not quite sure where, or I remember where our hypothesis 2 was. So for hypothesis 2, it should be around page 58 or 59. 58 plus means it's just a later page, 58 or later, and the Ecology and New Hope section, right? So that's where we would go. So what was that? Well, through the marvels of technology, I have that kind of sentence frame, and I'm going to shrink it down just so it's a little smaller. All right. And let's pretend my independent variable was abuse. I'm going to put IV for independent variable. Will function as a let's see, it is, it would be a biotic variable because we're abusing it, so it's biotic, by causing. So I'm confident that the abuse or the independent variable will function as a biotic variable by causing plants to get harmed or, let's say, injured, whatever it means for a plant to be injured. And once they get injured, so it'll cause plants to get harmed or injured and not grow or survive as well as the plants not abused. And that's the control eco cup. The one that we didn't abuse, or the one that we didn't put an independent variable to, is called the control eco cup. So just to recap, we have in this video gone over the goals. We've addressed what the scientific problem was, and we've discovered, using these resources on page 3, how we can use this information to complete question 2 above. And we use this information to complete question 1 above, or task 1 in our report. Good luck, and the next video will cover the next questions and tasks.